Welcome to the Drive Able podcast. I'm Brad Williams, and over there is Ali Akbarium. Today we're talking about making the decision to move to hand controls with Bella Mitanovski. Bella, or Isobella, has spastic diplegia cerebral palsy. However, she learned to drive without any modifications to start off with, and we're going to talk to her about the progress towards hand controls. How did that happen? What happened? What process did she go through to move towards hand controls? Should be a really interesting conversation about the process that she's gone through and that decision of doing hand controls in the end. Ali, are you excited to get this underway?
Let's do it. This one's going to be really good. Isobella is a bit of an online influencer as well, so it'll be good to get her on and see what she's got to say.
Welcome to the Drive Able podcast, where each episode you get to listen to two of Australia's leading professionals in the area of driving and community mobility for people with disabilities. In each episode, they interview drivers, carers, and industry experts and share the insider's guide to driving with a disability. Here are your hosts, Brad and Ali.
Hi everyone, I'm really excited to get into today's interview, but before we get started, we just wanted to do a quick shout out to our sponsors who make this show possible, Mobility Engineering and Williams OT. This show takes time and money to put together, so we want to say a huge thanks to the sponsors for helping us bring you this podcast. Now, let's get onto the show. Today we have Isobella joining us. G'day, Isobella. How you going? Tell us a little bit about yourself and about your background and your disability and so on. So how you going? Introduce yourself.
Yeah, fantastic. Hello. Thank you guys for having me. So my name's Isobella. So I have spastic hemiplegic cerebral palsy. Now that affects part of my brain that controls my movement. I know it's a lot of words there, but that affects my movement. So my legs, predominantly, both my left and right leg. And despite what these challenges bring, I've been really determined through my professional career and also personally to really just change people's perceptions of what disability is and what we can achieve. I work in HR. I've got a pretty successful career in what I do, both in recruitment and just overall HR. I'm really proud of what I've been able to achieve through that. And I focus mainly on empowering others and breaking down those barriers. So most of what I do within HR is diversity and inclusion. So it's fantastic being able to work with marginalised groups of people and seeing them achieve their goals as well through that. And I also use social media as a platform to challenge those social norms and really just showcase the incredible abilities and accomplishments of what people with disabilities can achieve, using myself as an example and some other people within the industry as well, which is lovely.
See why we had to get her on, Ali?
Yeah,
awesome already.
I the first thing I want to say and observe is I don't know how this might come across, but your energy is not an energy of a disabled person. So that's really cool. And that's really weird. I don't know if it sounds offensive or not. It's not trying to be, but it's like what you said at the beginning was like trying to change that kind of perception. Instantly the energy comes across and you know what I mean? So that's really cool.
The passion behind it.
Exactly.
You can feel it.
Exactly. So that was really cool. Just a quick question. Is your spastic hemiplegic cerebral palsy, is that like something that's like a consistent effect on you, or does it change on a daily basis?
Yeah, so the cerebral palsy in itself is consistent. So I've had that since I was born. I fatigue, so I can wake up in the morning feeling great. I have consistent chronic pain, but as I always kind of compare it to a marathon runner, when they start the marathon, they're feeling great, they're feeling really good. At the end of the marathon, you can see them just really trying to get over the line and really struggling there. That's kind of like a day for me. At the start of the day, I'm feeling a lot better than what I do at the end of the day.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's cool. I mean, good thing we have you. It's the morning, so it's a good thing we got you at the start of the day then, eh?
Yeah.
What we're here to do is to talk about driving. Let's talk about what life was like for you at the start of your driving career. So let's go back to when you were 15, 16, and first thinking about your license. What happened in that part of your life?
Yeah, so I think my driving experience is probably a little bit niche. So I drove for 11 years prior to getting without hand controls. So I got my license like anyone else at the age of 16, really eager and excited to get on the roads. There was no indication that I wouldn't be able to drive, or no one ever told me that that was something that would be a barrier or a hurdle in the future. However, driving for me was really painful. So I did get in accidents because I can't control my leg spasms, but I just thought that that was something that I would have to deal with, or that's just what driving is. I didn't know that you could drive without pain, or that it could be something that you could do like long term. I would constantly have to park on the side of the road, or a 20-minute drive would be a 45-minute drive for me because I would just get really exhausted while doing it. But I drove just like anyone else, had a driving instructor, did all of that, went through the process with my logbook. And then it wasn't until I'm 28 now, so it wasn't until I was much older that that changed for me.
Why did it change?
Yeah.
When you say you didn't know, like as in, so you were driving around thinking this is how everybody drives? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay.
I don't know many other people with it hasn't been until I kind of got more of a presence on social media. I don't really know anyone else with a disability. So for me, my siblings and everyone else were driving. I've got a large family. Everyone else was driving. And it was just something that you don't really, if you're in pain, you don't really speak about it. I'm in pain every day. But it's something that I'm so used to that you just don't really speak about. So I just assumed when you put your foot on the brake that you'd get sore legs or you'd get sharp pains in your legs. But it wasn't until I started to voice it that people were like, that's not normal, Bella. No one
Yeah.
drives like that. That's not something that we
Are
have.
you part of a larger family?
So I'm one of 7 siblings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well,
So I have a big family.
yeah, that's it. I just, yeah, it's interesting because from what you're saying, I think there's some advantages to that in terms of pushing you to be
Yeah,
independent, right? In a big crew of people, because
definitely.
you're like in a crew of 7 kids, and
Definitely.
they're kind of like, we don't care if you're disabled or not. You're just playing or you're not.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so
And I
yeah, I
think that
think
was
that,
the biggest thing growing up as well. I constantly was doing what my siblings did. They all got their license, so I went and got my license. I was never kind of segregated out of that. My parents never told me that I couldn't do anything. So I really tried to be as active as I could. And my disability has never been a restriction for me.
Yeah.
Even though there definitely are restrictions to my mobility and are restrictions, it's never been something that we've looked at negatively, which I'm really appreciative of
yeah,
as well.
that's really cool. I mean, there's a lot of great advantages in the story that you've got there. Like having a large family, I guess that's kind of like your own community. So you're
Yeah.
spending time with them and not spending as much time with the disabled community. So you're
Mm-hmm.
being influenced by, the abled community more than disabled community. I
Mm-hmm.
think that may be a reason why you're doing what you're doing. The question I had around the driving, is that you said you had like some accidents and stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, like how bad was that? When were you starting to voice your concerns, and to who did you voice the concerns? Or did someone come to you and
Yes.
say, hey, you've had a few accidents, what's going on? Like what, when did the signs come that, hey, I need to sort of do something a bit more, something's up?
Yeah. So I guess to preface, I didn't know that my license was going to be getting suspended or restricted or anything like that. I went to see my GP, and that's probably something that you guys will ask eventually. But I went and saw my GP thinking that I was just getting a medical assessment because my medication had changed. So I just always coined myself as not being a very great driver. I was never going to be in Formula One. I could get to A to B pretty safely, but other than that, if I was going to do anything snazzy, or if you wanted me to drive on a road trip, I was probably better being a passenger than driving that long distance. And we just coined that to be me being not a great driver. But I did have, when I was 18, I had a pretty significant car accident where I drove into the side of someone. And that was because my legs were uncontrollably spasming and I had no control to press the brake. And that was pretty scary. I didn't drive for a while after that. My car got ridden off, and that was pretty frightening. But that was just, we always just thought, oh, that's Bella. She's not a good driver. I don't think I cared to admit. I think I was more fearful to admit it had something to do with my legs. Then I think I felt safe being like, okay, you think I'm a bad driver, great, I'll sit in that category, because I didn't know that there would be an opportunity for me to be able to get my license back if I voiced that it was because of my legs. And in saying that, I was really aware to not drive when I was fatigued. I knew my trigger signs so that I could be safe on the road from that accident. I never wanted to put anyone else in danger or myself in danger from that moment as well. But I think I was just a little bit nervous in being like, okay, there's an issue with my cerebral palsy. It's affecting how I drive, because I didn't know that I would be able to ever get my license back if I did say that.
So was there a point of time that you actually did, you've mentioned a couple of times there about a medical suspension after a doctor's review? Is that what happened, and what process was happening at that point?
Yeah, so I had changed the medication I was on, and I also had just received a disability parking sign, and I didn't realize. I think the biggest thing is that, which I'm so grateful that you guys are doing what you're doing, because for me, no one was communicating what was going on during the process, and I didn't know what questions to ask. So I went and saw my GP, not realizing that when you get a disability parking sign, you have to do a driving assessment. I didn't know that. So you do a fitness to drive and they fill out a form. And I wasn't aware of that. So I went to this appointment just being told that I'd be having a medical assessment. And then maybe 4 weeks later in the post was, your license has been restricted. And I had no idea where it came from. So I called Service SA and I was like, what do you mean? I don't go through red lights. I haven't had a speeding ticket. And I hadn't had an accident in about 6 years. So I was really confused. And then they had said, no, you went and saw your GP, and they've done a fitness to drive for you, but there was not that communication. So my license originally got restricted to a 30-kilometre. I was able to drive 30 kilometres an hour at a 10-kilometre radius around my house, which meant around my house I can drive 50. The speeding limit is 50 kilometres, so I really couldn't get anywhere. And I had that for a year prior to seeing Williams OT.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I just want to call out the SA government there and say, what a bunch of assholes, mate. Like, seriously, that's a pretty shit go. Just to send you a letter. Come on, South Australia, seriously.
Welcome to my life, Ali. Welcome to my life. This is
with no warning. I mean, that's
nothing.
Just heartbreaking. I mean, I'm just it's hitting me a little bit emotionally, because I'm imagining opening a letter, just having a normal day, and then suddenly just getting a big punch in the face out of nowhere with no idea where the hell it came from. That's pretty that's not cool at all.
That must have been hell. So, like, what did that feel like, and what was the next steps for you, Bella?
Yeah, so if I'm honest, that I went into a really, I'm a very happy and go-lucky person. Not much gets me down, but I rely on my car just like anyone does. It just felt like my independence had been taken away, and I got really depressed. I think as well, it's so important to say that as someone with a disability, we already feel like a burden, and you already feel like a burden to those around you in the things that you can't do, or it just felt like another thing that I wasn't able to do. And a lot of my friends don't live on the side of town that I live on, and Uber's expensive, buses aren't accessible to me because I don't have great balance. And I just felt like, a really big burden. I never wanted, I've been with my fiance for 13 years, but I never wanted him to step into a caring position for me. And I felt with me not having my license and all the appointments that I have to manage and maintain my cerebral palsy, that he would then have to step into that. And I just felt like a massive burden. Yeah.
So when was it in your life then that you actually went, oh, hang on, there's something else that I could do? And when did you go, right, I need to go see an OT? When did all of that, like, how did it go from I'm a burden and I didn't want to, and I don't want to be, to that next step of finding a different solution?
Yeah, so I definitely threw a pity party for about 3 or 4 months. I then got called to my specialist, and my license then got completely revoked. So I had another driving assessment, and this was due to changes in the medication that I was on. So that I was on a higher dosage, and my license then got completely suspended. And I think for me, it was the biggest thing was, oh, I also had a guilt of I've been driving for all this time and I'm actually not fit to drive the way that I
Mm.
was driving. And I think I carried a lot of guilt in that because I felt awful. What if I had gotten in an awful accident? And it wasn't necessarily for myself, but it was, I'm endangering other people as well. And I think I carried that guilt. So I went to this specialist appointment and I think I said, oh, it must be my medication, it must be my medication. And that's what I felt at that GP appointment. But when I went to this specialist appointment and they had me press on things like I would in a car and they had me do it all really virtually, they then said, yeah, they were a lot more honest in how they were speaking to me. And they said, look, Isobella, we're going to have to, your license will be suspended completely. But they then explained you need to call a physio and this is what you can do, but you will only be able to drive with hand controls moving forward. So at the time in my mind, I was like, well, I'm not going to be able to drive at all. This is it. But it wasn't until I called a few different physios and they referred me to Williams OT that I was like, oh, there is a light at the end of this tunnel. It's not as far fetched as what I thought it would be.
Cool. So when you're going through this stage where you were involved with NDIS, how did that fit into that initial
Yeah.
stage? Was
So
there
I think,
frustrations? Was it
yeah.
easy? Was it hard? Where did NDIS come into this part?
And did you already
So
have NDIS?
I did. And
Yeah.
NDI, and I also, it's the first time I've ever had NDIS with cerebral palsy. As a child, I was with Novita and they're really great at being with you and stuff. But when you get to your adult ages, you're kind of on your own. So I didn't really know what to do. So I worked with my specialists and I've just gotten onto NDIS, which I kind of thought, oh, I may not be eligible. Like I've worked my whole life, like, but it's been fantastic having that. But NDIS, I've learned work as silent operators. So unless you ask them, they won't really communicate with you, but you have to already have the questions to ask, which I didn't at the time. So it wasn't until I spoke with a physio who then referred me to Williams OT, and I had a conversation with one of the physios there, Gianni, that I then felt like I was equipped to go back to the NDIS and say, hey, this is what I'm going to be doing, this is what I need. But I needed to have those people with that knowledge to be able to help because I just didn't know what I was doing in that case.
So when you went in for your initial assessment, was
Mm.
it terrifying? Was it eye-opening? What was running through you? Talk us through that experience of going in
Yeah.
for your initial assessments after being referred.
Yeah, so I went with my support worker and I was absolutely terrified. I think I'd had so many hurdles and so many roadblocks that I thought to myself, oh, I'm not going to be eligible for this. Or they're going to say, look, yeah, sure, it's a 3-year process, like, and it would be really, really long. I was really, really nervous. And I also just I'd never seen hand controls before. I'd never seen anything like that. So I really just didn't know what to expect as well. But I was feeling really, really nervous.
And then the process that you went through with the OT, Gianni, how did that change? Did it what was the process that you actually went through, and talk to us from an emotional level as well? Where did things start to change for you?
Yeah, so initially we had an initial assessment. Gianni was absolutely fantastic in explaining the process and just helping me as well, guide me in what I need, what information I needed out of the NDIS. to be able to get this, which I felt, oh, I finally have someone in my corner. It's so hard to advocate for yourself when you don't know what you're advocating for and you don't know what you're eligible for as well. So to have someone in my corner that was advocating for me and that was finally on my side. I'd seen so many medical people who were like, no, you can't drive, or taking things away from me. Finally having someone who wanted to help and help me regain something, I think was incredibly emotional. I finally felt like I had a player on my side, which was, yeah, something that I hadn't had for months previously. And it was the moment that I thought, okay, I can do this, like this is going to happen, was when I had my appointment with you, Brad, and we got in the car and you showed me all the different mobility controls. And it wasn't just to show me, it was, no, you're selecting what works best for you. And that's when I was like, oh, okay, this is going to happen. Like I'm in a car, I'm kind of picking and choosing. And I think that when I left that appointment and I just bawled my eyes out to my dad, because I was like, oh, this is actually going to happen and I'm going to regain my confidence in a way that feels safe. After that car ride, I left and I was like, Dad, my legs don't hurt. I think I remember saying in the car, this is just so weird to be able to drive and not be in pain. So I think there was a few little nuggets and a few little pieces that led to that, or that had me have that realization, but it definitely was a process. It wasn't kind of just a light bulb moment for me. There was a few different things. And I think we constantly have that self-doubt or have that imposter syndrome where we're like, oh, this is not for me, or this isn't going to happen, or I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. But since engaging with Williams OT, that having that support was just fantastic.
Yeah, that's really good.
So we went through a process. So you touched on that we do an initial assessment, confirm that the lower limbs weren't safe for driving. Really, I mean, that was confronting to actually go, yeah, this is actually, the doctors were right as well. Was that like a final nail in the coffin, so to speak? Was that that emotional
definitely.
as well?
I think it was, I think leaving that appointment, it was definitely feeling like, oh, okay. Like it's not just these people who see hundreds of people telling me, it's actually facts, and I think Gianni explained to me as well the reason why. And he explained to me what an able-bodied person, how their legs would operate comparison to mine. And that just put it all into perspective, which I really appreciated, because it hadn't been properly explained. I'd kind of just been told no, but I hadn't had the why behind it. And I think we all really need that why. So to be able to get that, it was kind of like, oh, okay, this is awful that I've been driving in that way, but I'm grateful now that I have that knowledge.
Yeah, it sounds like you had I guess the thing is the first few years of your driving, you were almost driving in the dark in terms of your knowledge of like what reality was and how you should have been doing things safely and so on. And not to say that you were unsafe, but you just could have had a much better supported environment there by the sounds of things,
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. So you went through a learning process. In South Australia, it's done a little bit different. If you're listening to this in another state, make sure that you chat with either your OT or your licensing department, whether it's the RTA in New South Wales or Vic Roads or wherever you are. Make sure that you understand the process in your state. In South Australia, you have to pass a Department of Transport test with a Department of Transport assessor. Okay, so we assisted you to get ready for that assessment. So bunch of lessons. What was the learning process like?
The learning process was really exciting. I think it was, once I knew that this could happen, it was really, really exciting. And using and having a car, it's not just here's some mobility aids, here's some assistive technology to be able to get you to drive. It was, here's some that we've selected for you that work best for you. So being able to use my arms, which are my strongest point of my body, to drive in the hills independently, in the Adelaide Hills, which I have never done before. was really exciting as well. So there were moments like that where I just thought, wow, I can do this. I can, and I'm not sitting here in chronic pain, or we don't need to pull over because I'm too tired. Like, I'm able to do a 2 hour lesson and feel really good and feel like I can pop to the shops afterwards, which was really, really exciting.
Well, yeah, I mean, it sounds really good. What about sitting that test with the Department of Transport? How emotionally draining is that? Was it fine? Was it easy? Was it hard? What's that final test like?
Yeah, for me, untraining, I've obviously driving for 11 years, you get into habits and you get into things. So I felt like I was my 16-year-old self again, sitting next to a learner's like instructor. That was really I was nervous, but I was also confident because I'd had those lessons, and the lessons that I'd had weren't just, oh, drive willy-nilly. It was also refocusing on what a driver or what an instructor would be looking out for. So I had already had that knowledge. It was more so just overcoming that anxiety and those nerves and feeling more confident in my abilities as well.
The
And
person
I think
in
that's the
yeah. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, I was going to say, I think that's the hardest thing, because people have been questioning your ability to drive. For this process for me was over 18 months. So for those 18 months, people had been questioning my ability to drive. So that to then be told, no, you're a good driver and you can do this, and you're going to sit with an instructor and you're going to pass, you're going to do really well. I still had those preconceived notions of, no, I'm not. Someone just like the department, medical, like professionals have told me I can't drive. So how is this going to be any different? What if I have a spasm again? What if something happens? Like, so then having to then regain that confidence and trust in my own abilities as well was something that I had to go through.
Yeah, I can understand that somebody that doesn't know you is then going to put their own opinion on you one more time, and then they can take all of that hard work away just one more time, and it's like, I can understand. Yeah, it must be extremely scary.
That's a question I wanted
Yeah.
to ask around that. When you did your because one thing that just flagged with what you were saying, you were assessed for your, I guess, fitness to drive by someone in SA Transport. Did you find that? Did you feel that that environment, first of all, was comfortable, fair? Was that person like, I guess, accommodating or compassionate to the fact that you had a disability, or were they just like, all right, let's see what you can do? And, was it kind of like the letter experience, or was it a little bit more smooth around the edges?
Yeah. So they definitely and he had said he doesn't really drive with people with disabilities
Yeah.
that often. So
So that,
he's just going to view me as another driver on the road, because at the end of the day, that's what I am. So I did appreciate that, but there was no real, if I made a mistake, it wasn't like there was not going to be any leniency in that, in
yeah,
those terms. So that kind of added to the pressure of, oh my gosh, you've really got to do a good job and you've got to work through this, because at the end of the day, in some other circumstances, people do give you leniency, but at the end of the day, I'm just another car on the road.
yeah.
So I've
Yeah,
got
and it was
to
not
thrive in
just
that
about the
respect as
leniency, but
well.
also just compassion
Yeah.
to your situation.
No,
Like,
I
as in,
understand.
like
Yeah.
it sounds like he's kind of said to you, "Hey, I'm just going to treat you like everyone else," which I think is a pretty good baseline to start with, because then you're kind of like, all right, well, I just have to focus on my driving rather than my
Yeah.
disability as such,
Yeah. And I think I appreciated that as well, because I didn't, and I did preconceive. Sometimes I get spasms, or sometimes this will happen when I'm driving. But to be able to, get in the car and have him just see me as someone else, I felt like I wasn't over analyzed as well from having a disability, which I appreciated.
Yeah, yeah.
Time is skipping away from us, but I really want to ask another question. What about the NDIS process for actually then getting the vehicle controls in your car? How was that, and was there any hurdles along the way from that side of it all?
Yeah, so I definitely had to be hot on them. If I didn't email, or if I didn't call and follow up, I found that it was a few months of not hearing anything. So I learned pretty quickly that I had to constantly check in. So when we'd sent them paperwork, or when we'd sent them approvals, once it was approved, That I think there was a few back and forth. I had to get a roadworthy assessment on my vehicle as well. So we used my vehicle that I had been driving previously with and put the hand controls in there. So I engaged with RAA and they came to our house and did that, which was brilliant. That was fantastic. I didn't have to arrange for someone to bring my car to a separate location. They were able to come to my house and do that assessment. But really having that communication. I have a plan manager through NDIS, so working with her and having that communication just to ensure that we were on top of it. But I think it was really difficult, and I applaud and I provided them feedback as to not everyone has the means or has the confidence to be able to be on top of the NDIS all the time. So if I didn't do that, it would have been a much more drawn out process.
Just for people listening, if they're going, well, why does she need an RAA test? And in New South Wales and Victoria, NRMA or whoever your local automobility authority is, an independent assessment's required with the NDIS when your car is just outside of the guidelines for the Department of Transport. Look, it can be a long way outside of the guidelines for NDIS, I should say, out of the guidelines for NDIS. If you want to hear how far a car can be outside the guidelines, go and listen to Leonie's podcast that we did with her for her very old discovery. But you have to go through that process to tick all the boxes for the NDIS to fund that modification into an older car to make sure the car's roadworthy and so on and so forth. Yeah. So look, what's the future look like for you now? Or what's driving like now?
Yeah, it's fantastic. I've regained 2 levels of independence. The first one is being able to just go to the shops by myself or pop in and visit family. My sister just had a baby, so being able to go and help her and just drive independently, pop music on and not be in the passenger seat is just fantastic. And also being able to drive and not be in pain is probably the biggest and most significant thing that I've gotten out of this and knowing that I'm safe when I'm driving and that I will get from A to B safely is the biggest thing that I've gotten out of this.
And is there any advice that you would give somebody else that may be driving in pain, or maybe their feet are getting a bit slower on the pedals, or maybe they're not, maybe they don't realize that they're not as safe as what they could be? What advice can you give somebody that maybe is in a similar scenario to where you were?
I would just say that our egos just aren't worth the risk of what could happen if you did get in an accident. I had a really big ego of saying and was pretty prideful in saying, yep, I can drive, I'm successful in driving, and I'm going to ignore the red flags that are popping up in terms of having that weakness in my legs. But it's just not worth the risk. I was really fortunate that I was in an accident where no one was hurt, no one was injured, there was just damage to cars. But it could have been a lot worse, and I would have kicked myself every day had I not done this. Like, why didn't I do it sooner? So I just think if for any moment that there is a thought in your mind that potentially you're not driving safely or something's inhibiting your driving, I think that is then when you need to reach out. I think because most able-bodied people don't have those questions and they don't feel like that. So I think if that's something that you're thinking or feeling, then definitely go speak to your GP or go speak to people who are able to support you and help you in that area. And it's not to say that you'll never drive again. As you can see here, I'm driving now fantastically. I drive it with my job. I'm constantly on the roads. So there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, look, there
really
are
good.
multiple solutions out there, aren't there? There really is many things that can be explored. I mean, Ali, you supply lots and lots of stuff around Australia to help people be able to get into cars and out and about and do it safely and so forth. The OTs are there trying to assess, to try and find solutions that are going to make it safer, going to make it more reasonable, going to make it pain-free. Talk to an expert.
Yeah, and one thing I just wanted to flag before we go off, there's something that you said at the beginning, and as you were winding up, actually reminded me of a personal story of one of my good friends. which I'll just call him X. So X, also when we were young, everybody was like, "Oh, X is just a really bad driver," and he had like 11 accidents between the age of like 17 and 22. Turned out he had chronic fatigue, and he just kept falling asleep. But the thing is that nobody actually knew that, and even him. Because it was always like, oh, he's just a bad driver. He's just a bad driver. And it was really interesting that you were saying that, because it was kind of like accepted. And then when few years down the track, he was like, man, I've got chronic fatigue. I keep bloody falling asleep everywhere, and I have to manage this. And then he managed it, and now he's not a bad driver anymore. He has had an accident in, like 15, 20 years. And so I guess what flagged me, I guess it's out to the listeners there, is if you've got that reputation for yourself, maybe do what Isobella did and go and investigate a little bit further, because maybe you're not actually a bad driver. There's some other issue that's holding you back, and yeah, I thought that was a pretty good statement, because I know there is people in our communities like, oh, that's a bad driver. Oh, I'm not that great, but maybe there's something deeper in there you need to be exploring.
Just maybe go and explore it before someone takes your license away from you.
Exactly, because that's the worst, that I just still can't get over that emotional kind of impact that would have. But yeah, that's
Well, as every week we run out of time. We've gone way over again because we get sucked into these conversations and get emotionally involved and stuff. So hopefully you find these conversations beneficial. But as we wind up and say thank you to Bella, we have one final question coming, which we ask every week. But before we do that, we just want to do a quick acknowledgement to our sponsors that make this show possible, Mobility Engineering and Williams OT. All right, Bella, we've learned over this podcast that cars are more than just getting from A to B. I mean, we can hear it in your stories as well, how much freedom it gives you. But is there one thing that is really meaningful for you that you've done in a car, something special, a special trip, an adventure, something stupid maybe, that you can share with us that nobody else knows about?
Yeah, so I have been driving. I've left the house on a Saturday and just drove up the coast and just gone to Port Elliot Bakery, which is our local, down the coast, down south here in Adelaide. Got myself a donut and just done that independently. That's the longest I've ever driven by myself. So being able to do that has just been fantastic, and being able to sneak away in my car and play music and sing in the car and do all that sort of stuff has just been fantastic.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Awesome. A huge thanks to you. It's been absolutely wonderful. I mean, I know you, and I've even learnt more because we don't get a chance to talk at that level when we're in the car. So awesome. Thanks very much for that. If our listeners if they want to get in contact with you, we know that you're on the socials and so forth, and you're an advocate for people with disabilities. Is there a way that they can do that? Where can they get in contact with you?
Yeah, definitely. So my Instagram account is Bella Mitanovski. I know every letter of the alphabet in that last name there, but I'm sure there'll be a place where they can read it here. And then my LinkedIn is Isobella Mitanovski. So you're more than welcome to reach out to me on both of those accounts, and ask any questions that you want. I wish I had someone during the process to speak to. It wasn't until I engaged with Williams OT that I had that. So happy to be an advocate in your corner as well.
That's awesome. I just
awesome.
started following you. So
brilliant.
So if you're watching this on YouTube, the spelling's there underneath Bella's smiling face there. Just put that into your search bar and it'll come up. But we will put a link to that in the show notes wherever you're getting this podcast from, whether it's on YouTube or whether you're getting it through Spotify or SoundCloud or Apple Music or Google Podcasts as well. So we're out there on all the channels. So make sure that you like and share these, and share it to somebody who is maybe not a safe driver, and share it and go, maybe we need to do some investigation. All right. Massive thanks. We really appreciate your time and energy, and we really hope that the listeners get something out of it. We did for sure. So make sure that you leave us a comment if you did get something out of this, and like we said, share it, like it. Make sure that you share it around so other people get to learn from other people's stories.
Yeah.
As we do every week, stick around, everybody. Ali and I are going to do our top 3 takeaways after we come back from this little break. But as we do that, thanks very much, Isobella.
Thanks, Isobella.
Thanks, guys. Thank you so much.
All right. Welcome back. In this section, we bring you our expert analysis and top 3 takeaways from the interview with Isobella. This is where we provide more than our 30 years of experience in the industry, helping people with disabilities to drive and get out in the community in a safe and meaningful way. So, Brad, again, that was a great interview. I love those interviews where personally I get emotionally pretty affected and charged, for lack of a better term, as well. So thank you, Isobella, for that. Give me some good energy for today. So, what do we get as our first lesson off the bat?
Well, as an OT, this one is gold nugget for us, and I want anybody that is working with the NDIS to maybe print this out, put it in front of you when you're going through the process. Isobella made an amazing quote. NDIS are silent operators. Now, if we unpack that a little bit, it means that they're in the background for you, but they can't do anything unless they're told what to do, which is really, really, really important. And she said, be hot on the NDIS, be proactive, make sure that you're communicating loud and proud, and make sure that stuff gets done. For me as an OT, that was huge. Absolutely
Yeah.
huge.
Look, I mean, this is a very, very common theme that keeps coming up. And I guess I just love to highlight it, particularly to provide support and context for our community out there, is that the people that we've interviewed that have had that success, that are like that in Isobella cohort, that, you know, they've got what they need, they're back on the road, and, you know, all these confidence, they're the ones that pushed. They're the ones that kept hassling and hounding and chasing up and reading everything and not just sitting there and going, oh, why isn't anything happening for me?
Yeah.
You know, they're operating, but they're silent. It's a big scheme. It's multi-billion dollars. It's you know, you've got to be on it. You know, it's your life. It's no one else is out there working for you. You're working for yourself. So you just got to be on it, and you've got to be on them. And yeah, the ones that are proactive, they're the ones that get everything through and get what they need.
Hey, I don't know what it's like in other states, but that's a little insider secret for the Department of Transport here in South Australia too. That as unfortunate as it is, the squeaky hinge gets the oil.
Oh, yeah, that's with everybody. Yeah,
it is with everyone. But with the Department of Transport here in South Australia at the moment, it's the same type of thing as well. Be proactive for yourself, stand up for yourself, tell people what it's like, tell people what you're going through, and, you know, keep promoting that you need what you need.
Yeah, and that's actually a really good segue to the next one, which is drop the ego. Drop the ego and be honest and be open, and don't think, hey, I need everything done for me, or you know, I can drive and I'm just a bad driver or whatever. I can do this. Consult and ask and see, what do I need to do? Call NDIS, call the OTs, you know, speak to the community, talk to other disabled people that have done it, you know, and drop the ego. And that's again another very common theme of our guests that have had the success. You know, thinking all the way back to one of the first ones we interviewed last year or 2 years ago, where he made the choice to, you know, give up the license and start to, you know, use hand controls or whatever. Basically, the people that have made that active, proactive choice, they're and dropping the ego, they're having more success in their lives. You know, they're integrating well into their communities and not hitting barriers in the community and life. So it's just more comfortable.
I'll link it into something else that she said. She said that she didn't associate or didn't socialize with many people with disabilities. But what we've heard, especially from some of the interviews that we've done with people with spinal cord injuries or gained a disability later on in life, that they've gone out to sporting events and they've seen somebody else doing it. And that's the light bulb moment that maybe I could do it as well. I mean, she was comparing herself to her brothers and sisters and so forth, an able-bodied community, and trying to drive the same way that they were driving. It wasn't until she started reaching out and looking for answers, and then she found the answers. So go and explore. Go and explore what, if it's not the same as somebody else, go and explore what other options there are. And go and, you know, being linked into similar people with similar needs and similar disabilities might be the eye opener that can be really beneficial for you.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And that takes us into our third one. And this one, there's a bit of emotion behind this one. What can we do to be more compassionate to help people with disabilities? And the reason why we say that, this is our third takeaway, is that Isobella opened a letter in the post to tell her that she couldn't drive anymore. And just the emotional response
Without
to
warning.
that, without warning,
without anything, without reason.
Yeah. And then, and the final hurdle, she's also, no compassion for the hand controls. It's, apples versus apples. You have to drive like everybody else. And I can see the reason why that, but how can we be more understanding?
Yeah. And for me, this is a really big, I guess, thing that I really grinds my gears a little bit. And I talk to even my own personal team within mobility engineering about this quite a lot. Because even we face it every day. We had, I think I might have even spoken about it in last week's podcast. We had an OT that kind of wrote off, one of our customers because they had a brain injury, and it's like, oh, don't worry about them and listen to me and blah, blah, blah. And I sort of stepped in and I said, look, this is not okay. Like these people are human beings, just like everybody else. We've all got feelings. And one of the things I've experienced, particularly in this area, is it's almost like the disabled person or community is like an easy target for this weird, non-compassionate, robotic, shitty behavior towards them. Because the thing is that it's just, I mean, I'm sorry about the language, but it's just a shit go getting a letter like that. And and this is what I experienced myself, and I know Brad would experience this with the clients. The disability community is some of the lowest self-confidence people you've ever met, because they already, like Isobella said, they're already carrying a burden, and they know that every day. They live in a family every day that they can see their mum and dad struggling, and they can see it. They're seeing it all. They're not idiots. They're just like you and me. And so they're already carrying this freaking massive burden. They don't need any extra shit. They need some more help and some more love and compassion, and the thing which really grinds my gears with the driving is because even when we talk to the blue badge guy, the insurance guys, they're more careful. They don't have accidents. So why are we hassling them and scrutinizing the crap out of them and their hand controls and their this and their that and what have you got here, and let me give you another assessment and another freaking assessment, another assessment. There's no need. There's no data that supports that. There's no basis for this really crappy, non-compassionate behavior, and it really, I guess it really causes me emotional pain seeing that treatment to people. They're just like everyone else, and it just seems like it's an easy target. Yeah, let's just write them a letter with an easy target, because if I rock up on the news tomorrow, I can easily say, yeah, this person can't drive, so I can say that to Current Affair. That sounds good, and it doesn't sound good at all. I can rant on this forever.
Yeah. You know what? I've got nothing else to say. That you've summed it up beautifully. I mean, there's a court case happening in South Australia at the moment where somebody with a disability has unfortunately killed somebody. After recommendations were made, and it's being absolutely dragged through the court to find out who's responsible for this accident. Is it the person?
I wonder if they'll do the same sort of responsibility checking for an able-bodied driver, because they kill people all the time as well, a lot more than disabled drivers. So, will they get the same sort of scrutiny? Yeah. Are they going to go and check their driving instructor, the person that was in SA Transport assessing them? Should they be? It's just, it's not okay. It's just an easy target, if you ask me.
Look, let's leave it there. That's well said, Ali. I'm going to back you up on that one. Well said. I've got nothing else to add to that. That's awesome. And that's what we're here for. People is, this is why we do the podcast. We want to advocate. We don't have a disability that impacts on our driving. However, I wear glasses, but I don't have another disability that impacts on driving other than that. But we've both been in this industry for many, many years, and we just had to get together to speak up for the community as much as we possibly could, because we want to promote the hell out of it and get more people driving in a safe and meaningful way.
Yeah.
All right. So we
That's
wind
it.
up this episode. We want to give a shout out to our sponsors that make this show possible, Mobility Engineering and Williams OT, for bringing you the interview with Bella today. And we couldn't thank her enough. Williams OT Driver Assessments and Rehab offers all the pieces of the puzzle to assist people with disabilities to reach their driving and community mobility goals. And Mobility Engineering is a team of passionate and dedicated people focused on bringing Australia's largest range of suitable transport solutions for all walks of life. And as we say in every episode, the advice provided in this podcast is general in nature. So if you've got any queries about what can work for you, make sure you get in contact with your local OT driver assessor or mobility dealer and set yourself up with a trial, because trials really do put you in the driver's seat, just like Isobella trialing all of those hand controls way back where she saw the light bulb went off for her, and she could see the future of driving pain-free. That's it.
That's it. Thanks very much, Brad. We'll see you next time.
That's it, mate. Thanks very much, and we'll see you then. Thanks for listening to the Drive Able podcast with Brad Williams and Ali Akbarian. If you like what you've heard, make sure you like, rate, and subscribe. It really does make a massive difference. If you or anyone you know would like to share a story about driving with a disability, or you would like to get in contact, find the show notes, or find the resources mentioned in this episode, you can find us on Facebook. Just search @Drive Able Podcast for more information.